across the pond to take on Sam Darnold and those undefeated Vikings. Dan, I tried to tell you about Sam Darnold.
You did.
Meanwhile, Jets wide receiver Alan Lazard, who's been having a solid season, was asked if the team's offense isn't quite in sync yet. Alan, talk to me.
That's the way that you guys may interpret it, being 4 games into the season and being antsy for results and having high expectations and stuff like that. But, I think if we were to ask ourselves 2 months ago if we were 2-2 going into the second quarter of the season, then we'd be pretty content with that and knowing that there's a lot of football and a lot of potential for this team to, especially offense, to reach and everything.
Full house right now. We got J-Mac back. We got Danny Boy, S.A., and the one and only Mina Kimes. Hi, Mina.
Hello. Good morning.
Mina, I want to start with you.
Hold on.
Dan?
Did he just say
Totally content.
they would be content at 2-2? Who'd they
Yes, he
play
did.
to?
Yeah,
Titans.
Those are his words.
that's
So-
what he said.
San Francisco, Tennessee, New England, and Denver, and they're content at 2-2?
Yes, Dan, you heard him. You heard him.
Not great.
Like, why?
They didn't. I don't know, Alan. They didn't bring Aaron Rodgers there to be 2-2 and content with being 500. So that's odd.
Mina, what do you think? Did the Jets need to beat Minnesota Sunday to prove they're a Super Bowl threat?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, let's live in a world where they don't win and they drop to 2-3. What that will mean is while the team has lost to good teams, no doubt, their 2 wins will have come against the Patriots and the Titans. They will have lost to a Broncos team that had -7 yards at halftime, which I believe has never happened. The defense is still good, but the pass rush isn't good enough right now. The offense is bottom 10 in efficiency. They can't run the ball. And I don't think anyone here trusts the head coach and offensive coordinator to turn things around. If they don't win against the Vikings, I will not look at this team as a Super Bowl contender. I'm not saying that their season is over. I still think they'll win games. I still think Aaron Rodgers will play well. But do you really think we can put them amongst the ranks of the Bills, the Ravens, and the AFC? Absolutely not. I will not have faith in this team to go that far.
Dan?
Yeah, they got to beat Minnesota. I think more than that, they got to get Devontae Adams. I went into this season and I honestly believed that the Jets were a legitimate Super Bowl contender. I think after a month, I don't feel that way. I think they're a good football team. To Mina's point, no. So first of all, number one, they stand still on offense, okay? They don't use motion and play action. In 2024, if you don't major in many ways with motion and play action as part of your offense, I've said this for like 4 years, but certainly this year as well, it's hard for me to think that when you play good defenses, are going to be able to play dominant brand of offensive football. When you stand still on offense, you've got to get elite players on the outside. You have to have guys that you could just line up like when we were kids at recess and say, my guy better than your guy, go whoop him. Mm-hmm. Right now, they don't have that person. And I'm surprised by that. Garrett Wilson has not ascended the way that I thought. So more than like beating Minnesota, for me, it's more proving to me that you're going to go get a player that I know can go do that on the outside.
Oh, my God. Oh, my Lord. I cannot believe. And Molly, you just going to sit there and let this man engage in this drivel. First of all, understand something. It's not that your argument was wrong, Dan. It's that this is the same thing that I talked about with the Cowboys, and you lit into me. And you're sitting here saying the same exact thing about the Jets. You need another playmaker out there. You need somebody you can throw the football to. Yes, Garrett Wilson hasn't ascended, and I get
Stephen
that.
A., I don't think the Cowboys are legitimate. I don't think the Cowboys are legitimate. That's the difference.
Excuse me. What we're talking about, yeah, but my point is that wasn't your argument. Your point was everything you said about what Devontae Adams would do for the New York Jets is what I articulated about him with a Dallas Cowboy in a Dallas Cowboy uniform because of Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb. And you sat up there and looked at me like I was speaking Arabic.
I didn't. I quite agree with you.
Stephen A., but he's also saying there's not hypocrisy because he never believed that the Cowboys were going the distance as a contender anyway.
Correct.
And the Jets he did.
Correct.
But when he broke down what he just broke down about the Jets, I was saying the same thing about the Cowboys, and he was acting like, no, that doesn't apply. It does apply. It does apply.
I agree.
The fact of the matter is, if you're going to be anything effectively as an offense for the New York Jets, you've got to have additional weapons on the outside.
Right.
First of all, I expected more from Breece Hall thus far than we've seen. Obviously, it's more from Garrett Wilson as well, and I get that. But Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. You got Aaron Rodgers, you make that kind of investment. You give him all the tools that he needs in order to succeed. I was saying the same thing is all I'm trying to say.
Jason?
All right, now, am I answering? Are we talking Cowboys need for Devontae Adams?
No,
Are we
Jet.
talking the Minnesota? Which
Jet.
one do you want me to answer?
Jet.
But Stephen A., to your point, I said the same thing, but I think Dan agreed as well. If I'm moderating, I'm listening to both of you guys.
Listening,
I
we got
think
an adult in the room.
I think you're saying the same thing, but that's neither here nor there. I don't think the Jets need to beat the Minnesota Vikings to prove they're Super Bowl contenders. It's still so easy early in the season. We talked about the Houston Texans. They got beat up on by the Minnesota Vikings. We talked about the Buffalo Bills. They got beat on by the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens lost to the Raiders, so I think you can lose a game early on in the season. For the New York Jets, it's about figuring out their identity on offense. Dan O's mentioning bringing in a guy like Devontae Adams. I think besides that point, you have your best receiver talent-wise on the team talking in the media, saying things like, our offense, I'm looking at other teams, and we just don't do anything. My route tree, I'm not running enough routes. I think those are the question marks of trying to figure out why on the first play of the game you end up in an 8-yard loss on a sack. They have to go out there against the Minnesota Vikings and prove to themselves that we are the football team that we think we can be, that people are sitting here at a desk calling us contenders. We have to prove to ourselves we are that team. They lose to the Vikings. Their next 4 games are against AFC opponents. That include the Bills, the Steelers, the Patriots. Those are the games that they're going to have to, and Houston.
Yeah.
Those are the games they're going to have to win to get to the playoffs. And then we can start talking about, all right, we're in the dance, and now we can contend for a Super Bowl.
Mina?
They have their identity on offense. It's Aaron Rodgers. That is the offense. This is the Aaron Rodgers offense. And guys, it's not changing. Dan, you talked about how the Jets offense is out of step with a lot of the modern offenses we see in the NFL. Buffalo being exhibit A of an offense that changed its identity, leaning into all of the things that make life easier for quarterbacks, motion, formation, different personnel groupings, all of that, play action. Aaron Rodgers doesn't want to do those things. We know that from his time in Green Bay, right? And then he left, and then that offense leaned into that. My point is, this offense right now, what we are seeing is the same offense we are going to see as the year goes along. I think adding Devontae Adams, Dan, certainly lifts the ceiling of that, because that offense, that brand of offense, is so contingent on having elite playmakers. But even if they add him, do you feel that this team is good enough to go toe-to-toe with the Bills and the Ravens?
I do. I think if they add Devontae Adams, my answer is yes. In Kansas City now, because MK, it feels to me very similar to when we used to have the conversations on live, Tampa Bay and Tom. And Tom went down there, and it was like, it was the same thing. We used to talk about it. They don't motion, they don't play action, they just want to stand there and play spread out football. They added AB. And AB was like that thing that put them over the top to really go and be dynamic on offense. And I think that is the big part for me. I'm sitting there going, they got to beat man coverage. Right now, the Jets cannot beat man coverage because they stand there, okay? So, yeah, I do think if you add Devontae Adams, they can contend with Buffalo, they can contend with Baltimore, and they can contend with Kansas City and Houston. So, yes, I do. I think that more than what they look like this weekend, obviously they got to go play well. But it's not going, you tell me 3 weeks from now they get Devontae Adams, my perception of this football team is significantly different and not predicated on how they perform this next weekend.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. I would say this, to answer the question directly this time around, do Jets need to win Sunday to prove their Super Bowl threats? No, I don't expect them to win. I'm not even judging them by this upcoming weekend. I don't think they've got the personnel to beat the Minnesota Vikings at this particular juncture. You're talking about a defense, and I'm talking about it just because of their defense. Number 1 in sacks, quarterback hits, pressures. I mean, the way Brian Flores has them playing defense, we didn't even get to the offense with Sam Darnold and what his QBR is. Justin Jefferson and Addison and what they bring to the table. Aaron Jones out of the backfield, what he's bringing to the... I mean, we ain't even get into all of that. I'm just looking at Minnesota being a superior team. And to me, the Jets, as from a person